This is the new SEC.
And we're back. New SEC podcast, episode 21, week 10 recap. Unbelievable week of college football. Absolute cinema. I'm Randall Ledet Jr. We got Hunter Zeisman here. Hunter, talk to me about this crazy week about college football and how you felt.
Big upsets all over. Two absolute beatdowns in the SEC, too, with South Carolina and Ole Miss. Penn State going down to against Ohio State, Clemson losing. I mean, we could talk about the games for hours because there were so many huge ones that impact the upcoming playoff rankings.
Absolutely. My Houston Cougars taking down Kansas State. Some chaos going on in the Big 12 too. But in the SEC, it was just the main spotlight game was that Texas A&M South Carolina game. My man Shane Beamer was out here celebrating his wife's birthday. They're absolutely dominating on the field. Raheem Rocket Sanders, 2 tutties. Lenora Sellers, buy or sell his stock at buy for sure. Unbelievable performance from South Carolina and Texas A&M. Every week in the SEC, it feels like we think we have this team that's at the top, and then they get hit with a loss. And so it's crazy. Even the Georgia-Florida game, a lot to take away from that game. The scoreboard does not indicate how close that game was. Probably the closest, I would say, game from Florida versus Georgia in a while in this rivalry we always talk about. And a great way to go out with the last game in Jacksonville before they make the renovations and they play in Atlanta and Tampa. But the actual game itself was really entertaining and close for a while. I think 2020 going with 5 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, and if Flagway was there, I think the game goes different. I think Georgia fans are starting to try to figure out what happens to their season from there. But good fight from Florida, even behind QB3.
Definitely good fight from Florida behind QB3. And so once again, welcome to the new SEC podcast. If you like content like this, please like, follow, subscribe. Today, we got an amazing episode for you. We're going to be talking through a couple key headlines with South Carolina and what this means for the Texas A&M season. We're going to talk about Florida's new QB situation. Really unfortunate what we saw happen with Lagway. We're bringing back our stock up, stock down segments. We're going to talk about which teams in the SEC stock is up, which teams stock is down, and some are neutral, right? And we'll finish up with around the country. Got to talk about all the craziness and the madness that happened around the country. This is our last around the country segment before we get the official college football playoff rankings coming out on Tuesday. And so all the chaos is going to make for a really fun show on Tuesday on ESPN, and maybe more to come from this show here. But that's what we got going for you today. And so
the headline of the week inside the SEC was Texas A&M going to South Carolina, playing a South Carolina defense that was on fire, ready to take a team down like they do in November, and A&M falling 20-44. At this point in the season, A&M was number 1 in the SEC, taking that number 1 role. They hadn't lost in the SEC yet, only lost to Notre Dame at the beginning of the season. Now, this wasn't really a loss. It was beyond that. It was kind of a beatdown at South Carolina in this game.
Yep.
So we start asking the question, is it time to panic on the season? What does this mean for A&M season going forward? Do they control their own destiny? How do you feel about A&M leaving this game and what happens to them for the rest of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. Leaving this game, the way I feel about A&M is I love thinking in extremes. I think it's how fans think. It's like, is this absolute chaos? Do we start panicking? Are we going to win the SEC? Last week, A&M fans were watching these games thinking like, Texas who, right? They joined our conference, and now we're top dog in the conference. Right now, after watching this game against South Carolina, I don't think it's time to panic just yet, but the margin for error got really, really slim. And I think there was a couple of things I would take away from this game when it comes to preparing against Auburn and, of course, going forward in the future against Texas.
Yeah, and the hopes right now for A&M, especially before this game, was SEC championship game. Win that and punch your ticket to the playoff. No matter what, you lose that game, you still have an opportunity. 2 lost. You don't really know what's going to happen with this upcoming Texas game either. And now you're not really guaranteeing your spot. There's a lot of 2-loss teams out there. Now you're only 1 loss in the SEC, so you do control a little bit of your destiny when it comes to making it to that game. Now, I will say the Texas game down the road, I think that what A&M showed in this game, while not pretty on the field, it doesn't really correlate to what might happen in that Texas game. If I'm A&M, I still feel okay about what happens in the Texas game because of the way they played in this one. And that might sound crazy to say because they lost by 24.
No, and this is a good South Carolina team, right? This is not me caping for the Texas A&M performance, but it felt like South Carolina was kind of building up to having this type of game. They obviously dominated against Oklahoma a couple weeks ago. They played a close game against Alabama. They played a pretty close game against LSU. Some would argue they should have won that game with some of these questionable calls. This South Carolina team is 5-3 for a reason. Like it's a good team. For A&M, it was close, at least for the most part in the first half. What you don't want to see is a team like South Carolina getting up 14-0 on you. They're not going to face as dynamic of a rushing attack like Raheem Sanders and Lenora Sellers from the quarterback and receiver, quarterback and running back position. And so that's kind of the saving grace. And call me crazy, it's almost like you'd rather get the loss out of the way now before bye week, kind of humble the team a little bit and get you feeling good before New Mexico State, Auburn, and Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned they're not going to face, when it comes to that duo in the backfield for South Carolina, Sellers, Sanders, when you're looking ahead in the season. So in this game, 25 missed tackles for Texas A&M. I mentioned when we were talking earlier today that a missed tackle stat like that, based on how A&M's been playing this season, I don't think is a standard of what's to come for them. I think it's a bad performance on the day. And it says a lot about what South Carolina was able to do when they were evading the tackle. Sellers got out of a ton of sacks. Sanders got out of the backfield many times when you would think that A&M was going to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Texas is built that way. I definitely don't think that Auburn is built that way from the quarterback position to escape that pressure. So, I feel good when you're looking forward because of what you mentioned in how South Carolina played in this game. I think South Carolina played really, really well.
Absolutely. And I think South Carolina played extremely well. I feel like with A&M, I'm looking at other games like Arkansas being able to lock down Jaquindon Jackson at the running back position. So it's like we have other sample sizes. I think I have a tighter lens on that schedule just because, Arkansas is okay. LSU, the jury's out to me. And we talk about some of the other teams they played against. Missouri. They were the first ones to put belt to ass on them before Bama. But the schedule's okay. You just need to win out, and you should find yourself in a good position. So Hunter has been the playoff expert here, and so I'll let him talk a little more about that.
Yeah, you control a little bit of your destiny because there's, with the one-loss SEC teams, taking the Notre Dame loss away and looking just in conference. If you get that win over Texas, you're punching your ticket to Atlanta. I mean, it's just about guaranteed. There's a couple of scenarios that can play out here and there, but you're really just about punching your ticket. And I think you still feel strongly in that game based on seeing what Georgia was able to do successfully against Texas from the defensive side of the ball. I think that Texas A&M can bring some similar pressure like that. Mm-hmm. So you're controlling it. If you do lose to Texas, I think it's going to be tough to see where the season goes. You're going to a bowl game, but I don't think the playoffs are in the picture. If you lose to Auburn and beat Texas, there's some playoff scenarios that will shape up over the next couple of weeks that could still get you into the SEC championship game. You win that, you're in. So it's not pretty, especially when you're looking at the resume, right? Like you mentioned the teams that they've played, they came into the season top 20 strength of schedule. A lot of the teams that were supposed to boost that schedule, we started to learn who they are. Right. Florida, Missouri, those teams have kind of shown a different side than what maybe preseason you might have thought that they were. So the Texas win, if you can win that game, will kind of carry this team to wherever they need to be. But now you're looking ahead a little bit.
Right. If you make it to Atlanta via winning out and winning that Texas game, you're good. When I think about panicking, I would panic if I felt like the performance on both sides of the ball was just, awful. And I think the offense looked okay. The defense obviously didn't play well this game. That's a really strong rushing attack. What we've seen from the rest of the season makes me feel like this defense still has it, locking down Notre Dame in some ways, locking down a lot like Florida, playing, obviously locking down Missouri. It's just, this defense is still strong enough. This game was just an anomaly to me. I think going forward, if the schedule had featured, Georgia and Tennessee and some of these other Ole Miss, these other heavy hitter teams to wrap up the season, I feel a little bit differently, but I don't think it's time to panic just yet. I think you still ride with Reed for now, and I think the defense will regroup. That's Elko's strong suit. I can't imagine this defense looking any worse than what we saw this past game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Reed is your guy. He passed well, other than the interception. Put the ball on the ground a few times. They recovered some. It looked a little bit iffy on some handoffs there. Le'Veon Moss, Elko said the injury didn't look it's not as bad as it might have looked on the field. So still TBD on what happens with him, but you have you have Amari Daniels back there playing well. Reed, a good rusher and showing good passing in itself. So no need to panic. The future is still bright. You put yourself in a good position on the season by doing what you did up to this point.
We're going to move next to our stock up, stock down segment. We did this in week 4 of the season. Love this segment. Really, it's our opportunity to talk about what football we saw this week and what teams we think stock has rose, which team's stock has gone down, who's neutral. I think, keeping the theme of this game, South Carolina's stock is way up. They're not necessarily playing for a playoff spot right now, but when you look at the football they've been playing the last couple of weeks against Oklahoma, and obviously in this game here, this defensive line is nasty. Kyle Kernard will be graduating, but some of these other guys will still be there going forward with Dylan Stewart, of course. This defense finally got them over the hump to get that win, and the offense, kind of built on that twofold in this game.
Yeah. And we're filming this on Sunday, but I want to put it out there. I think that we will see this team get a number beside them in the college football playoff rankings on Tuesday. No love in the AP, but I think that they'll see a number beside them playing solid. I see a world where they win out from here with Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Clemson. The Clemson team looked vulnerable this past weekend. What South Carolina is able to do could bode well for them in that game. So I think South Carolina definitely stock up.
Yeah, definitely stock up there. Lenore Sellers was able to limit some of the turnovers. That probably helped a lot in this game as well. I mean, Raheem Sanders, there's a reason why he was a top SEC running back. Absolute dog. That boy, big as hell, right? To over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, toting that thing. And so South Carolina stock is way up for me. When I think about the other side, Texas A&M right now for me, the stock is neutral. I don't think it take a super strong hit. What do you think about Texas A&M from a stock perspective?
I got A&M stock down a little bit. I know we just hyped them up and saying their praise on what they can do in the season. I think the stock is slightly down because we saw early on in the game the play calling and style of being so run heavy put them behind the 8 ball a couple times because it wasn't the smoothest offensive game plan. They put the ball on the ground a few times, especially with Le'Veon Moss maybe being out for a little while. Hard schedule left with Texas at the end of the season. I think they're trending down, but it's down from a high spot. So while slightly down, it's coming from a high position.
Definitely. Another great game that took place over the weekend was Tennessee versus Kentucky. So Tennessee was victorious. Took place on SEC Network. It was pretty close the majority of the game, right? Yeah. Tennessee pulled away more at the end. We saw 2 different quarterbacks come in for Kentucky. Jamori Macklin was able to get his first touchdown of the season. Jeremy Macklin's cousin for Kentucky. When I think about this game and whose stock was, I would say slightly up, I'll give it to Tennessee based upon the defense. But if I could do positional rankings when it comes to stock up, stock down, the offense, while it looked good, still to me a little bit of a liability when it comes to where I think Tennessee wants to be. But I will give them stock up.
That's a good way to put it, where they want to be as opposed to where they're at. Yeah. I think that they have all potential to be even higher. Dylan Sampson still had a great game. All things considered by game end. I think Nico played better than he had. I think that they're trending up for me, but for a number 7 team in the country who will probably be right around that come Tuesday, I think that they could be better than they are, but they're moving in the right direction. I think that they looked smoother in this game than they did against Alabama, for example, which some people didn't agree with me on in the past couple of weeks.
Absolutely right. I mean, you got to see Brew McCoy involved at the receiver position for Tennessee. You watch the game, you hear the Brews cheers in the crowd, right? You got Dylan Sampson got 2 touchdowns, so he's going to get his every game. Nico didn't have any interceptions this game. He had 1 touchdown in the game. The offense put together plays when it mattered, but when you look at the game, the first 4 drives, it was like missed field goal, punt. There's just more opportunity there, but they're so strong on defense, and they're just obviously a very well-coached team where they're winning games. They deserve the number 7 spot. So I'll put their stock up. I thought this was going to be a big opportunity for them to win kind of in a Florida-Kentucky style.
Yeah. And Kentucky did well to stay in the game. They managed. I'd say Kentucky, for me, it's just I can't put their stock up. I don't think that they're improving in any way. don't necessarily know if they're down. I'd say that the defense has been trending down week over week on the season. This one a little bit better, but Tennessee's has a propensity to kind of put themselves in these situations without the defense's help. So I'd say Kentucky's neutral, maybe trending down, but I wouldn't put like a whole lot of confidence or like passion behind that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you. Another team that I will put some confidence behind, that stock is definitely up, and I think you know who I'm going to say, Hottie Toddy, Jackson Dart, 500 and things, yards-wise. So second quarterback in the SEC all time to have over 500 passing yards, Drew Lock being the other guy from Missouri. Ole Miss looked super impressive. This offense looked like the offense we've seen earlier in the season. Best offensive performance of the season. Watkins at receiver looked pretty dominant. And, November is the best time to be playing your best football. And so if they look like that, they beat Arkansas much better than LSU did. This could be a dangerous team. Their stock is way up for me.
Yeah, if they wanted it, they took it. That's all I got to say about the way the Ole Miss team played. If they wanted it, they were going to get it. And that's the deep ball. That is a sack. That is the safety to start early on in the game to really kill any momentum that Arkansas could have ever had. It didn't help Arkansas that Taylor Green was rattled, shaken up, and ended up having to sit out of the game. But Ole Miss did what they wanted to do. I mean, play in and play out. 63 points. I mean,
It was theirs. It was theirs. I mean, they absolutely dominated. Watkins had a record performance for Ole Miss at receiver. So Jackson Dart just looked incredible. This could be a really dangerous team if they keep playing like this. I'm looking at Ole Miss's schedule. So they looks like, Florida and Mississippi State left. And of course, UGA. We'll see what they can do with those upcoming three opponents. So
I think how I feel about Georgia. And we can maybe jump there in a little bit, but I think that could be a game for them to take, especially with the defensive pressure that they put out.
Definitely. Georgia's a team that is shown to play up or down to their competition. And so we'll definitely we'll get to Georgia in the stock up, stock down segment we got going on right now. For Arkansas on the other side of this game, unfortunately, we've been really high on them all season. I got to say stock down. Giving up that much in yards. This team has not been able to get 2 consecutive wins since the beginning of the season when they played a group of 5 team in a power 4 team. You beat Tennessee, you beat Mississippi State, but you lose to A&M, you lose to LSU, and now you lose to Ole Miss. It's just so hard to read where they are, and naturally I have to say stock is down.
Stock is down for inconsistency, and I will give them a bit of a leeway and a bit of a pass. I mentioned it. Taylor Green rattled, taken out. Malachi Singleton played well, all things considered, came into the game and did fine. It didn't help Jaquindon Jackson was out. Braylon Russell not fully there when he got into the game, had to come out. So, they weren't playing at their peak, but they were at home. The defense, it was no excuse for how they let guys just run free all game. So, Arkansas trending down. Unfortunately, we love them pigs. Pigs on here. So, hate to see it for them.
It's tough for Hog Nation. Looking at some of the there's 2 teams that played group of 5 teams, OU and Miss State. Overall, I said it's neutral, just given the competition. Some highlights there. Jackson Arnold played pretty well. Van Buren, I think Mississippi State, they got something here with him and Coach Levy. He's a true freshman. He played pretty well. Johnny Daniels got involved in that game, and so they won both games. Not enough to move the needle, but neutral. You didn't go down.
Yeah, Mississippi State. They maybe wanted to see a little bit more. They started out a little soft in that one. I know.
Yeah.
There were players decommitting in the stands of that game.
Allegedly.
Some decommit since then. Some wide receiver decommit since the game. It's a UMass team that you should have beat up on. You kind of did. So the stock is slightly down for me there. I think Oklahoma is more neutral. Team that stock up though. Talk about Vanderbilt. First bowl eligible season in 6 years since 2018, and they've earned it. They went, Pavia now 3-0 against Hugh Freeze.
That's his trout.
Talking about it after the game.
That's his trout.
Yep. I mean, look, Hugh Freeze does not have his number. He got Hugh Freeze's number, and it's unfortunate for Auburn because they find themselves in a very tough spot on the season, and I really started to question Hugh Freeze's job. I mean, he's done nothing better than Brian Harsin did.
Yep.
It's hard to feel like he's the guy you roll with. It seems like recruits are okay, but it's not getting any easier. It's not getting any better as the season goes on.
It's really not, right? And so, from a stock down perspective, we're in the same boat. Auburn's stock has not really been up all season. We've only done a couple stock up, stock down segments, but there hasn't been a ton of bright spots. You only get one touchdown in this game. They were able to hold KLS to under 100 yards. And it's just you don't have the intimidation factor of your home field advantage. Like you watch the South Carolina game, it's hard to go into South Carolina and get a win. And you're Auburn. Prestige wise, you are higher prestige wise in the SEC. This is a prime time job. And I if I'm an Auburn fan, I'm questioning if, like you said, if Hugh Freeze is the guy for this job, given what this role allows you to do recruiting wise. You're less than 2 hours from Atlanta. You got good recruits in Alabama. You got good recruits close by in Florida. This is not the type of performances you expect to see week in and week out. And there wasn't a ton of bright spots in this game. You got players, fighting with people at the end of the game after they lost. It's just not a good feeling, down there in War Eagle Nation. On the other side, Vanderbilt, it's weird, right? We did a poll, and I think 80% of the people on our poll, I think I screenshotted it before the game started around noon, picked Vanderbilt, confidently picked Vanderbilt. So we appreciate all the votes that happened in the community tab, but they're meeting, there's expectations and they are meeting them. It's crazy to see.
Bro, we sat on here last week and we're like, why is Auburn favored in this game?
Right.
I don't know. Yeah. It was a shocking one to me. Hopefully some people made some money on that because Vanderbilt dominated that game all the way through. So good for them. Now,
and so for Auburn to get their stock up, they got Texas A&M and Alabama. UL Monroe to me is not going to help your stock. I'm sorry.
It's not. In the other two games, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
So we talked about this earlier. I know you got some things to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about Georgia. Georgia, man, it's a 14-point win. They didn't cover the spread.
Yep.
It didn't even feel like a 14-point win. I mean, it's not the way the game went.
It's not the way the game went. It was, like I said, it was 2020 with 5 minutes left. I don't love the if this person stayed healthy game. I mean, you're very familiar with that. If we talk Alabama, Texas 2 years ago when Quinn Ewers went down, and the Texas fans all season were like, well, if Quinn didn't get hurt. But this game, bringing it back to right now, DJ Lagway had this team rolling. This offense was able to score on Georgia's defense, and the offense on the offensive side, it was less about the Georgia defense. It was more about the Georgia offense. It's getting stagnant. It's getting stagnant. Last season, Carson Beck had 6 interceptions all season. This year, he has 11. He had 3 turnovers in this past game. It's just there's more to be desired there. So I don't want to say stock down. I'm going to say neutral.
Yeah. Team maybe stock up, but I mean, Lagway was throwing that deep ball. I mean, if he stayed in that game, they win the game. I hate to say that shoulda, coulda, woulda. I'm with you there. But then you get into Aiden Warner, who we're going to talk about more in depth here later. But and he comes in and still can run down and score on you. Has an opportunity in the tie ball game, to go down. It's a Georgia team that could be much better than they are. And you hear Carson Beck after the game, he's like, they couldn't really stop us unless I turned over the ball. It's like, brother, that's the problem. You're right.
Right.
Your team is kind of winning in spite of you. You're winning, you're leading drives at the end of games, but you're putting your team in a position to where you have to do that.
If I'm a Georgia fan, it's tough because I feel like if I'm a passive Georgia fan and I'm watching them play these games, they're dominant. They dominated Texas. They handled business against Florida. A lot of it is the defense. But if I'm a rational Georgia fan, I'm looking at this team and saying, what is the midnight hour going to strike us when it comes to these turnovers and we play in Oregon, or we play a good Texas team again, or we play someone else in the playoffs that maybe has some offensive prowess to take more advantage of these turnovers? That to me is a little bit of a concern compared to the play we've seen from Stetson Bennett in the past, right?
Yeah.
And some of these other quarterbacks have come through this program, Jake Fromm, Aaron Murray, just being honest. And I think a lot of Georgia fans feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, they saw Jaden Rashad warming up on the sideline and thought maybe he had a shot. And I hate to get on here because we do it all the time. It's like Georgia wins a football game, and then we get on here and we have to talk down on them because it's like, you're the number 2 team in the country. The game shouldn't look like that.
No.
And I think Carson Beck has it in him to not the game in that position offensively. I think that the defense has the pieces to not do that defensively and let a team like Florida with their third string quarterback and backup running backs, run down the field and score on them. Like, it's not as dominant as they could be, as they should be, as they want to be, as fans expect. I've seen a lot of people online talking down on Carson Beck in all kinds of ways.
And I think the expectation was that he was going to be the best quarterback in the SEC this year. It was between him and Quinn Ewers. Brady Cookson was in that discussion. Jalen Milroe was in that discussion. I think objectively, everybody thought Carson Beck was going to be the best. And I don't think that your expectations should always penalize you to the reality, but the expectations have to be equal to how you were last year or better. For Beck, it's a little bit tough. And so for me, Georgia, that was kind of the story of that game. It was close because of the mistakes. It wasn't necessarily fully close because of other mistakes across the rest of the game from the defense, from the running back position. To me, that was a story from that game from a Georgia perspective.
So you were talking about Florida. Where do you sit on Florida? Because they performed well in this game to standard of what was maybe expected given the pieces. So how do you feel about Florida?
Yeah, I would say for Florida, I mean, I think I don't know how, I can't speak for you. I'm going to say stock up. I'm feeling pretty good about Billy Napier the last couple of weeks of what we've seen. That Tennessee game could have gone either way. I think they could have won that game. You take care of business. This past week against Kentucky, you played a really good game against Georgia. Not many people believed that you were going to be in this game. And it's just unfortunate that you had to go. You're down to your third string quarterback and Aiden Warner, who had some moments where he shined and had moments where he's a freshman quarterback or redshirt freshman quarterback. So it's expected he's going to make mistakes. So to me, their stock is up. The running game looked good. Built upon that from last week. So that's kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah, and no full word right now on Lagway's situation. We're going to talk more about that. I think for me, the stock is down slightly, and it's not based on capability. It's not based on skill. It's not based on talent. It's not based on what I think Napier's been able to do. I'm not rewarding moral victories right now at this point for them. I think that this was a moral victory that they need to ride because they have a tough road ahead. To me, the only reason the stock is down is based on availability. You're on QB3. While he looked good in moments, it's not your game plan. Walk on transfer. To me right now, you're fine. You're in a tough position where really you're not going to be expected to win many more games except for Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
And you're rolling with kind of the backups. So to me, the stock is down just based on availability.
Yeah. I'll give that to you. I mean, I definitely get that. I think from who this team's going to feel going forward, yes, you're objectively down. If you're down to your third string quarterback, I think any team in the country stock would be down. I'm going to go off of just how they've looked as football players. They've played significantly better football compared to week 2 against A&M, compared to when they played Mississippi State. Even though they won, it still was kind of it was okay football. This team is light years away from the team we saw play Miami week 1.
Morale is high.
Morale is high. They're playing good football. They're crushing through this gauntlet of a schedule. They played Georgia a lot closer than you think. So to me, I'm going to say stock up. But I understand from viability. Yes, this team is less dangerous with Aiden Warner than DJ Lagway to me.
Okay, that was all the teams that played this week. Interestingly, I have 2 teams that I want to put in a slight stock up from bye week, and you're going to think I'm crazy for this.
I have in my notes too. I'm already knowing who's going to be. Go ahead.
All right. I think Alabama and LSU stock up.
Yep.
And I think it's because of the week that they have coming up and coming into this. And now there's limited playoff spots. A&M losing. They're now 2-loss team. You see some weaknesses with other teams. I think right now they both move up a little bit. Yep. They moved in the rankings. Alabama now at 11 in the AP poll. I think that they're going to be maybe around that come Tuesday. So I think their stock is up just based on where the conference sits and their future position.
Yeah, I think their stock is up based upon where the conference is in their future position. I think it's also up because they moved up in the AP from my side, right?
Okay.
Alabama moved up a couple spots in the AP. LSU moved up 2 spots in the AP. This is a season. Sometimes I wish the division still existed. I would love to see Alabama play Ole Miss. I'd love to see them play Texas A&M so we could have more of that definitive, they're better, right? Yeah. LSU is a natural SEC West rivalry, so they're playing it. It's great. But some of these other teams, I wish they could keep playing them. They play Tennessee every year from the SEC East, right? I just want to see it. I kind of miss it a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But I'm in the same boat with you. They're both up for sure.
Yeah, I think LSU will be behind A&M come Tuesday. I think that the AP poll it's a combination of a bunch of different people's votes and where the teams sit. I think when a bunch of people get in the room and they're sitting at 14 and 15 and one beat the other.
Yeah.
So there will be some changes come Tuesday, but still, I think that right now, based on what they have coming up, they're up.
I think their stock's definitely up 100%. I was hoping we get to a little bye week stock up, stock down.
Yeah,
Mix.
I wasn't gonna.
I had Bama moved up without even playing. They're sitting at 11. Right, the season ended. They'd be in the playoffs right now. So stock definitely up for both of those programs.
I wasn't gonna forget them.
And hey, LSU beat South Carolina. A&M didn't, but A&M also beat LSU. So
We'll see what happens next week.
Very unique season. I feel like all season we heard about how strong the schedule was. We heard about Graham Mertz, DJ Lagway being that hype freshman coming in. Really tough situation with Mertz being out, Lagway right now being evaluated. We're down to Aiden Warner at quarterback. This quarterback situation poses a really unique challenge going forward with the remaining schedule. Texas on there. I think LSU's on there. What are our thoughts here at the New SEC podcast when it comes to the Florida quarterback situation?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. You're down to your third quarterback. You had Graham Mertz, you had DJ Lagway, and now you're coming in with a walk-on transfer from Yale and Aiden Warner. He came into the game, a tough spot to be in a rivalry game, 7 for 22, 66 yards, and a very unfortunate pick to end the game.
Yeah.
Kind of momentum killing. And, before we get into the way that they feel, I've seen a lot out there about what Florida could have done with the quarterback position, how Napier's let guys go, Rashada on the other sideline of this game for Georgia, the beef that they've had there. I don't think that there's any room for that of fans expecting that there should have been a better QB3 on the roster. You come in with DJ Lagway as backup as the former Gatorade Player of the Year. I think that you've set yourself in a good position. It's just unfortunate you found yourself in a spot where you need to go with QB3. Yeah. I do think that there's potential there for this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think I'm going to play this another way to the fans that are saying that you see Rashada on the other side of the sideline. If you had Rashada, I don't think you get DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway was the Gatorade Texas Player of the Year. He could have went to A&M. He could have went to any school in Texas or any school in the country. If you got Jaden Rashada there as a sophomore, probably competing for the starting job, why would Lagway commit to your school? Right.
Yeah.
He from a PR perspective, obviously a lot less headaches right now with Lagway. Obviously, there's a whole political situation when it comes to the NIL and the whole thing. Everything that's not football related. But bringing it back to football, there's a lot of talks about the quarterback situation. And so with Aiden Warner, he beat out a Colorado State transfer to get that third string spot as a walk-on. And he had the opportunity to kind of have that moment. Like, you come in the game, you're the walk-on guy. The challenge was really just them converting on third down. I think at one point in the game, they were like 3 for 10 on third down. And the playbook didn't look as open with him in the game. And how could it be? He's the third string quarterback. He's probably not getting as many reps in practice. There's a lot of screen passes, a couple deep passes. It just didn't look like he has many reps. So I understand why he performed the way he performed to me.
Yeah, for sure. And I can see why he performed the way he did. I could see him getting better now that the spotlight is on him. QB3 up to this point in the season until Mertz went out, you're not really expecting to play. And then Mertz goes down and you're kind of like, okay, I'm the next man up. He was a three-star recruit out of high school, went to Yale between there and FAU, finds himself now at Florida. He has potential. He can throw the ball. I do think that while the playbook was limited, there was some confidence in him throwing the ball. Like, he had a good average depth of target, right around 10 yards. Like, he's going to be comfortable. I've seen receivers, and it's your team, so you're not going to talk down on him. But speaking out in confidence that he's going to be able to perform, like, he's a competitor. Yep. I think the play that he threw the interception on maybe speaks a little bit to what the team believes in him from a confidence level. Like, that's a play that, if executed well, takes some skill and could have done more for them, rolling out of the pocket and finding the guy on the crosser, like that flood concept to the sideline. They feel that he can make those plays, which I think bodes well for you. Plus this newfound running game that they've got.
Newfound running game looks really solid, right? Like they have a two running back tandem going on there. He made some impressive throws. I think, going forward, the schedule, you have nothing necessarily to lose with having your third string quarterback go out there. Obviously we're still waiting to hear back on the MRI results for Lagway. Really interested to see what they do there. If it was me, it's a 2 to 3 week injury per se. I might shut him down for the season. I just don't know if I want to risk anything more severe with, I think, a pretty prized commodity with him going forward to next season. And then it allows you to kind of help potentially develop Aiden Warner as your backup, right? To me, to be able to walk onto a program, go from, FCS Ivy League to G5 to Power 4, Winter Park, Florida guy, Orlando guy, right? Like Florida dude. He's got something there. We've seen some of these walk-ons do it, right? You've seen Stetson Bennett, Baker Mayfield was a walk-on at one point, right? Like it's not like out of this realm that walk-ons could be competitive quarterbacks in college football. And so he showed some stuff there in that, and the biggest moment to come into the game. He ain't playing Samford. This isn't Furman. Like this is a real deal Georgia football defense. These are grown men that are going to play football on Sundays.
And the next ones aren't any better. Texas, Ole Miss, and LSU. Like you will be playing that type of football. The running backs need to continue to do what they've been doing. Jaden Ball, Jacoby Jackson, Montreal Johnson Jr. when healthy. I think that if the running game continues to develop, and if he can continue to develop, I don't think that the play style will adapt too much. You're just going to need more from your receivers in getting open and making some plays after the catch. With Florida State kind of being the only one that they're favored in, do you feel like that this takes some pressure? Like if looking at the end of the season, if they lose out, do you feel like for Billy Napier and his job now, all of a sudden it's kind of like, okay, well, he didn't have a quarterback this season. Let him run it back.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I absolutely think that way. I think because, with Lagway and Mertz, it felt more even. Obviously, like Mertz is better. He's played more college football, but it felt like the performances were similar. So I think you would judge him as if he had a true starter.
Okay.
With Aiden Warner, walk-on guy, third string quarterback, it's not the same. It's realistically, it's not the same. And so I do think that he gets a little bit more leeway. Does it mean that you let the floodgates open and you can lose by 30 points each game? No. If that happens, I do not think he has leeway. I think you do look to move on. But if they play these games close, if he shows, to me, the mark of a good coach is coaching up someone like Aiden Warner to play at a higher ceiling than you would expect. So if he plays a lot better than people expect, the team can rally around him. That, to me, is the mark of a good football coach and a leader of a program. And with all the pressure that Napier's been on all season, if he could do something like that, I think he deserves another season. Absolutely. Like the schedule won't be nearly as hard next year as it was this year.
Okay. I think the fans will be split. I'm definitely with you. I think that it takes some. Okay. I mean, they wouldn't have been favored in the games anyway. With Mertz, Lagway, whoever you want to put back there. But it does make it a lot less even. I think there's going to be some fans that are like, it's a Florida program. We've won national championships. No moral victories. Like we want to win football games. But I get 100% what you're saying. And we don't know what's happening behind the doors. We don't know how the players feel about him. And if there's a better chance of them retaining that talent by keeping him there another year, because you have guys who are continuing to develop. So I'm with you. I think it's fine. I think that Warner could put themselves in positions to win one game at Florida State. I think the other ones will be very, very tough. The running backs could.
Out of those three, which one do you think they could steal?
I'm gonna. You might think I'm talking crazy, but I'm gonna say Texas. I was
gonna say LSU. I just feel like that game's always kind of a rubber match when they do play. I could see that being one of those. Texas would have been my second choice though. I think Ole Miss right now is rolling. But it'll be interesting to see what Aiden Warner does. It's obviously unfortunate what happened to Lagway, especially like when I saw the play happen. I think I texted you immediately. I was like, God, you hate to see that.
Yeah,
you want to see good football players play good football and see the game in its most even way possible. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with Aiden Warner going forward.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so around the country, just to kind of wrap it up, craziness took place, right? ACC, 2 of the 3 top dogs go down. Clemson goes down to Louisville, and Pitt goes down to SMU. Miami doing what Miami has been doing all season, playing close games, obviously let the floodgates open on Duke, but I feel like every team can put up about 30 on them. but they won.
Yeah.
Any thoughts from the ACC side?
Yeah, Miami game score looks a lot different than the way the game played out. They ended up covering crazy at the end.
Yeah.
But at this point, shout out Miami. They're likely going to play SMU at the end of the season. Louisville now ranked, so that adds a little bit of a gold star to Miami's schedule. The fact that they now have a win over a currently ranked team
helps Notre Dame too.
It does, yeah. So SMU now taking that spot. I mean, top 2 in the ACC now in their first season. So good for them.
Good for them, right? And Kevin Jennings coming in. Nick Saban had a lot positive to say about him. He thinks he's one of the better quarterbacks in the country. I trust Coach Saban a lot, of course. And SMU's looking good. They came in with a good amount of hype this past season. I was worried. Like they played well last year. They won the American. They lost to Boston College in the bowl game, and I'm like, well, if you can't beat BC, what are you going to do in the ACC? And look at them now, undefeated in conference. The Big 12. Iowa State goes down to Texas Tech. Kansas State Wildcats, led by Avery Johnson, go down to my Houston Cougars. Alumni, I'm gonna shout it out, of course. Willie Fritz gets the first Power 4 win for the program since 2021 over a ranked team. Not a ranked Power 4 team. Let me preface that there. So the Big 12, it's really kind of opening up the lane for the team that everybody loves or they hate, Colorado.
Yeah.
Sitting at second.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily control their destiny because there's a bit of a weird schedule right now in the Big 12 because it's led by BYU, who undefeated in conference play. And then you have Iowa State, who lost right behind them, and then Colorado sitting there just because they lost an extra out-of-conference game.
Yep.
They don't control their destiny, but if they can win out, they'll find themselves right there in the conversation. I'm not super polished on tiebreakers for the Big 12 and what that means for them, but it does paint a path for them to get to the playoffs, absolutely.
Yep. And that excitement, again, love him or hate him, is warranted. Big noon going to Texas Tech to watch them play Texas Tech, Colorado. So it's really interesting there. Iowa State, the midnight hour finally hit. They played a close game a couple weeks ago, and this week Texas Tech took it to them. Good Texas Tech team. Kansas State as well. Of course, we saw them go down, and I think the future is bright for them. Avery Johnson's really solid. This is his first full season starting. I think they made a good call letting Will Howard move on and keeping Avery Johnson. In the Big Ten, we had the biggest out of conference game when it comes to outside the SEC with number 3 Penn State, number 4 Ohio State. James Franklin did James Franklin things. Thoughts when it comes to his performance and what this should mean for the college football playoff rankings.
And you mentioned Will Howard. Will Howard almost kind of set them back at the beginning of this game. But Penn State, no offensive touchdowns on the day, just 2 field goals and a pick 6. Abysmal performance in the red zone. Abysmal game from Penn State all around. A couple questionable calls that I don't like to see change momentum of the game, like the taunting. Yep. But, at a certain point, I've seen a lot of discourse out there about what do you do with James Franklin, because at some point you have to win a big game. You have to win a ranked game. And it's like, but who's the guy that can coach Penn State beyond that? And it's a tough spot to be in because it's a tough job.
Yeah.
At some point though, you got to win the game. You got to win the game.
Yep.
I don't know.
It's definitely tough, right? I think we'll see how much longer they can go through this cycle because, in years past, there's 4 playoff spots. There's a Rose Bowl spot. Yeah, you don't win the conference, you go to the Rose Bowl. Everybody's happy, kumbaya. Now with 12 spots, the Big Ten's probably going to get 2 or 3 playoff spots. It's not just about getting one of those spots. It's about actually being a real contender. And Penn State has never shown that. Put me on the record. They haven't beat Ohio State since 2016. They're 1-10 against Ohio State, 1-14 against top 5 opponents, 3-18 against top 10 opponents. What are we doing here with all this resources, all this money when we're trying to win important games? That, to me, that's got to be the story when it comes to Penn State.
Yeah, and it's just tough because I don't know now. Penn State is a 1-loss team. And I don't know where they're going to find themselves at the end of the season because they don't have any ranked games left.
Yep.
Illinois, the only team that was ranked on their schedule,
just lost to Minnesota last week. Yeah,
they're not ranked anymore.
Yep.
So, what is Penn State's resume other than you lost to Ohio State? I don't know what Penn State's resume says. You win games, you play games to win games. You can only play the guy in front of you. But
of course,
when you're in a situation like this, I don't know what Penn State's resume shows me.
I don't know fully what it shows me either, and it goes to the point that I think we both were on the same page when we were texting. Is I think this year more than ever, the CFP rankings will be more resume based than wins based. Like I will not be surprised if I see a 2-3 loss team ahead of undefeated teams, or 2-3 loss team ahead of a 1-loss team. Like I don't think the CFP is going to just put teams in the top 12 because they have a 0 in the loss column or a 1 loss in the loss column. Like you need to schedule tougher games, and if it's not going to organically create itself in the conference, I would want to challenge some of these conferences to schedule better out of conference. And bringing it to the season, it's like Penn State doesn't have those marquee wins. Miami doesn't have those marquee wins. Clemson doesn't have those marquee wins. In the SEC, like you could say like Georgia has a marquee win, Bama has a marquee win, LSU's got a marquee win, A&M's got a marquee win. You don't see it in the ACC or in the Big Ten, and it's partially because of the competition. It's also partially because of the scheduling in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
like why is Miami not playing Clemson or SMU?
Because they want to get multiple. They want to get multiple teams into the playoff.
Like
it's a conspiracy.
I don't get how you don't have these marquee games scheduled for your top brands in the conference.
Yeah, because it feels like right now with 12 teams, it's not about it's interesting because we've talked about this on both sides. It's like, oh, if Miami's undefeated, they're going to get in. If Miami's 1 loss, they're going to get in. So we might as well give them a path to get 1 loss.
Is it fair if SMU wins the conference championship, say it plays out that way, like to put Miami in, that being their only loss, and we watch them play like all these close games? And look, I love Cam Ward. I like the U. I'm with it all, but it's like, are they really being tested? It's like playing college football 25 on varsity mode, and everybody else is playing on All-American and Heisman. Like, who are you playing against?
Yeah. I mean, you got teams like, I know Alabama. I'm gonna shout them out again as I always do, but like they've had 2 top 10 games. Like it's a complete different story. Like they won 1, lost 1. They lost to Vanderbilt, a team that's kind of been bouncing right on the verge of the ranked,
and they're ranked this week
conversation. Yeah, they're right there on that clips, and I'll be interested to see what they do on Tuesday. And how that they put themselves in the position to lose games. Miami hasn't put themselves in a position, and I know it's not the team's fault. It's not the coach's fault.
Yeah.
But it's tough when you get to it. And I think you're right, though. I think that once the playoff rankings get together, because the AP is just average of a bunch of people's 25.
Yeah.
But you get a bunch of people in a room and they go debate, and we all agree on where we think these teams are, and you're putting them head to head. You're doing that instead of just the own vacuum of your office.
Right.
I think that the AP poll voters are smart. I look at all of them every week and see who put what where, but when you're averaging them all together, it doesn't make sense. Like why A&M is behind LSU by 1 spot.
Right.
Both 2 lost teams.
Right. Why is Boise State ahead of SMU? Like what on their schedule? Like obviously they played Oregon. Why are they ahead of SMU? They lost though. They lost Oregon. SMU lost to BYU. Like if we're going to go off of key losses here, and so that's where it's a little bit side point from around the country, but still on topic. When you look around the country, I think that these set of rankings will be more different than ever. I think in the 4-team playoff format, you're looking at the 4 best resumes, perfect, no blemishes. I think in the 12-team format, you're looking at who really stretched themselves, who really played tough competition, and who controlled the games. And that's where I find it interesting for teams like Penn State. I also find it's an opportunity for teams like a Clemson, who actually did schedule pretty tough out of conference. Obviously lost to Louisville, but scheduled tough out of conference and is playing a little bit more tougher games. Louisville's ranked now, so that that'll help them as well with that loss. So
yeah.
The G5, kind of wrapping it up there from what we saw there. Army's the second highest ranked team at 18. They're keeping it rolling, still undefeated. Boise State's up to, I think, top 15 for sure. So in the AP, CFP comes out again on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. But those are the 2 teams kind of vying. Navy, tough loss to Rice, second straight loss for them, first one in conference. 3-6 Rice probably kicks you out of that playoff spot, I would say.
Yeah.
Contention.
It's interesting. Shout out the service academies. Get them in the playoff.
Yeah. So, right now we got about, I think we have the last regular season college football game is November 30th. And then you have the conference championship weekend is going to be the weekend afterwards. And then Navy and Army play around the 14th, I want to say. But we got about 4 weeks left of football in the regular season. It's going to be absolutely wild. 27 days before the regular season ends. It's going to be just pandemonium. We saw it this week. And so we're excited to talk more about the ACC around the country and, of course, the SEC. And so, Hunter, any last closing thoughts there?
No, I mean, on Tuesday, the first rankings come out for the CFP. So catch us for that episode. We're going to break down kind of our initial thoughts and, on Tuesday night and break that down. So catch us for that one. Previews coming up this week. We have a pretty good slate for week 11. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up.
Yeah, whole lot of exciting stuff. Thank you for tuning in. As always, like, follow, subscribe, make it easy for y'all to follow us. Game previews, game recaps, headlines, reels, everything here at the new SEC podcast. Until next time, I'm Randall Ledet Jr. We got Hunter Zeisman here.